construction project management company, but diversity and inclusion became our mantra when we saw how difficult it was to get into construction and project management.
Mm.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
I think we're good to go now.
Oh, great. I think we're on the
Go
slide.
ahead, Blane. I'll advance back to your slide.
Right.
There you go.
So despite all the boards that I sit on and all the public statements I make in the Philadelphia Business Journal, I actually have a job. And I'm president and CEO of BFW Group Construction Project Managers. And we are, we do construction administration, construction project management, owner's representation, quality control for construction. We do cost estimating and project controls. And again, we're not a general contractor. We are a consulting firm, an owner's rep firm. And now I'm going to turn it over to Janelle because I want to hear what she does.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Blane, and thank you, Rick, for the great introduction. It's really an honor to be on this panel today and hopefully, share some knowledge, share some of my experiences in my various roles within procurement and also supplier diversity, which has become a passion for me over the last 15 years. And I know Blane and I, we're both very animated, and we love having conversation. And oops, I'm not just sure what has happened. Oh, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and so we want this panel discussion to be as interactive and engaging as possible. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I do see a few questions already, but if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and let us know. So the Economy League. The Economy League is a 111-year-old think tank. We address the critical issues facing Philly by providing impactful research, connecting diverse leaders, and advancing shared solutions. And how we do that is from the variety of programs that we have in place. GPLEX, the Greater Philadelphia Leadership Exchange, which has been around for years, and some of you on the in this workshop probably are alumni of GPLEX. We have close to 1,000 alumni in the Philadelphia area. Our weekly leading indicator data stories. We also have what we call the Pivot, which is a series of videos that we've done since COVID to highlight some of the pivots that our business and civic leaders have done since COVID. We also have our Impact Labs, Policy Hub, and then our PAGE program, which is the Philadelphia Anchors for Growth and Equity. And I'll tell you a little bit about our PAGE program, which is what I lead. Basically, the PAGE program, I work with our Philadelphia Anchors, so that's our eds and meds, and I try to get them to spend more of their dollars with our diverse Philadelphia businesses. So trying to hold them accountable to spend money with our Black and brown-owned businesses and small businesses within the Philly area.
Thanks, Janelle. And so we will be taking questions throughout the session today. I know that some people started posting questions in the chat, which is great. If you could use the Q&A, that would be even better if possible. And we'll try to keep our eye on that. And we're going to pause, I think, at the end of each slide to take questions at that point. So we're not going to wait just to the end. There is one question already, though, from Taib Smith. Hi, Taib.
Hi, Taib.
How do we move diversity, equity, and inclusion to equity and restorative justice in terms of access, a parity in regard to inclusion?
So I'll jump on that because Taib is a mentor to so many people and has helped. If you don't know him, his name is Taib Smith, S-M-I-T-H, T-A-Y-Y-I-B. Taib has helped so many small business and has done business incubation for years, both in the Philadelphia area and and on a national scale. And I think, Taib, I don't want to say baby steps because you don't want to hear that, but I think that diversity and inclusion comes first before equity and restorative justice. And let me also say this, in terms of equity and restorative justice, I think it's critical. I think it's critical that everybody who's out there marching, everybody's out there is out there writing, everybody's out there protesting, everybody's out there doing whatever, being involved in the community. I am hoping that these millions and millions of people will vote. So that's my answer. If people will vote, we can begin to elevate this conversation to restorative justice. But right now, people just want to be included in the economics of the city and in the economics of cities and states, all 50 states around the region. And I think that's why we're seeing the social unrest. That's why we're seeing other things that go with the social unrest, some of them good, some of them bad, but it's calling attention to 400 years of racism and discrimination. And I don't want to, I want to stick to the panel and we can talk offline. But again, the first step we must take is, again, maybe I'm using the wrong words. Please forgive me. I'm not politically correct, but diversity and inclusion is the word. And that means everything to me, from recruiting, training, jobs, C-suite, boards. So that's the part that Janelle deals with internally in her corporate world, and also purchasing, harnessing the purchasing power of business, vending and purchasing in an inclusive way. And then, of course, my expertise is in economic development and in real estate and construction. The Economy League has been around for 111 years. The trade unions in Philadelphia, I think we have over 32 or so, well, 50 when you look at the region. They've been around for 111 years, and except for Local 332, which is a laborers union. I'm just talking about labor and trades right now. I'm not even talking about development in the business side. Except for the laborers local, the unions have been highly segregated, and that's putting it really, really nicely because we're being recorded. But that's something that we could talk about. This whole workshop could be about integration within the trade unions, and then on the construction side, and we'll get into this when further on. We have not had a mantra of diversity and inclusion. We're the owners of real estate, because that's where it has to start, not the unions. It starts with the owners of real estate. So it's the institutions, the developers, the airport, the city of Philadelphia. That's where it starts. So the owners have to say, like they did in Washington, D.C., like they did in Atlanta, this is the way we're going to do this, or else your proposal, your bid is going to go into file 13. And I'll discuss file 13 later. But once the vendors know that their non-responsive proposal is gone into file 13, and will not be evaluated, the market will change immediately. So we'll deal with that later. And Janelle, I get excited, so I just want to add anything.
No, not a problem. No, that's you've basically addressed the question. So nope, I'm all good.
All right,
Next,
so should we transition to the 6 key principles you guys are outlining here?
Well, again, the slides were developed by BFW, and we're so honored to have Janelle Lawrence on this, because she has been an expert in diversity and inclusion. She has been an expert in procurement. So having her on the panel expands this beyond real estate and construction, because the principles are the same. Yeah. So the 6 principles for integrating business and for diversity and inclusion include: number 1, make D&I a core value. Honesty and integrity is a core value. Most companies have that on their wall: honesty and integrity. However, a lot of companies have diversity somewhere in their core values, but it's not followed through. It does not come from the top. It does not come from the board. It's just on a piece of paper and it's meaningless. So we're talking about making diversity and inclusion a core value in terms of the company, the nonprofit. And let me also say this, and a lot of nonprofits may be on this call and you may not like what I have to say, but the nonprofits are just as bad as corporations and the government. They're just as bad. The numbers are the same. They're really bad. And except for a few corporations, and let me congratulate Gilbane on the casino. There's a $500 million casino going up in South Philadelphia right now next to the stadium. And Gilbane has hit 58% in inclusion, minority and Black inclusion. And I have to congratulate them because they started at 0. They started at 0 and turned it around. I was there. I was in that fight. I didn't get any work, but I was in that fight. And I got to take my words back and congratulate Gilbane. But number one, make D&I a core value, not because the government mandated it, but because it's a core value from a humanist standpoint. Make diversity a dashboard metric. We'll get into that. Create support structures for D&I growth. I have a $5 million insurance policy, and I get most small businesses have $500,000 or $1 million. And I get a fight to get on large project because these large projects want $10 million, $15 million insurance. How is a small business supposed to get a $10 million, $15 million insurance policy? It's almost impossible. We can't pay. And these large corporations want it when you bid. How am I supposed to get a $10 million insurance policy when I'm bidding? You have to pay $4, $5, $10, $15,000 for an insurance policy like that. Small businesses cannot. So we have to create support structures for businesses to include them in diversity and inclusion. Rewrite and redo procurement and acquisition policies. Most companies, large companies, have a whole procurement department, and there's so many barriers to procure some simple goods or services that we have to do better, and we have to create structures within procurement so that small and minority businesses can participate. Create actionable consequences. Start rewarding people that believe in D&I and punishing and firing people that don't. Build a system for the future. Avoid knee-jerk reaction. Every corporation is hiring a diversity officer that reports directly to the CEO. That's a knee-jerk reaction because what these companies are doing is they're not creating departments. These diversity officers have no staff and they have no budget. So we'll go through that to see what companies are serious and who is not. I'm sorry, Janelle, I get really excited. I'm sorry.
No, not a problem. And Rick, if you want to go into the next slide, that actually rolls right into what we want to talk about, which is opportunity for growth in Philadelphia. And I'll start with this slide. So at the Economy League and the PAGE program specifically, PAGE is, as I mentioned, is a partnership between the Economy League, the City of Philadelphia, and more than a dozen Philadelphia area institutions that work together to increase local purchasing by their institutional buyers to grow Philadelphia businesses, strengthen the local economy, create jobs, and at the end of the day, build wealth. So that's really, what our goal is with the PAGE program at the Economy League. And so today, the 34 universities and hospitals located in Philadelphia, they spend roughly $5.3 billion on goods and services every year, but nearly half of these dollars are currently spent outside of Philadelphia. So what we did a few years back was we created a supplier landscape report that basically showed, and the analysis showed that if at least $530 million of the anchor dollars currently spent outside of the Philadelphia region, we actually have local market supply for those dollars. And if we were able to capture just 25% of this $500 million opportunity, that would translate into 1,250 new manufacturing jobs and over 4,000 indirect jobs in Philadelphia. So, that total is about, that 5,000 jobs that we could basically shift to our local supply if they just capturing 25% of that spend. So these are the types of things that we look at and that we analyze and do research for the PAGE program, for our anchors And, you know, as I mentioned before, it's really about holding them accountable for shifting their spend and supporting their local economy. And Blane, I don't know if you wanted to speak on the real estate portion.
So again, when you look at these dollars, these are real dollars that are being spent in the economy. And these are real dollars that hopefully after COVID will continue to be spent. If you could go back to the other slide, please.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, if you could go back. The construction industry we're dealing with Northern Delaware, Greater Philadelphia, 5-county, and South Jersey. We have a $16.3 billion industry. Residential, we have a $4.4 billion spend. Commercial, we have a $2.7 billion spend. Infrastructure, we have a $3.7 billion spend. And institutional, which I don't believe my institutional, Janelle, does that include your spend or no? The institutional, is that a different budget?
Yes, yes.
So you can see, just if you were to add up institutional spend on that's 5.3 plus 2.4, that's 7.7 billion in terms of institutional spend. Philadelphia is an institutional city. The largest employers are University of Pennsylvania, Jefferson, CHOP. Healthcare is huge here. Blue Cross, and then Comcast is somewhere in there. But again, the large employers in the city or in the region tend to be healthcare and institutions, and they have the largest spend. So I do believe that in institutional, I believe in what you're doing, Janelle, because I do believe that as their purchasing and as their procurement rules change and move towards D&I, diversity and inclusion, I believe that other industries will follow because the educational institutions and the research and development and healthcare and the drug industry are all tied in. And so we believe that presents a huge opportunity. There are 121,000 jobs in the region in construction. And again, it's one of the first it's one of the first industries that's affected. Layoffs come quick and fast when the market drops, and hiring comes quick and fast when the market picks up. In other words, real estate is a major indicator of the health of the economy. We're going to stop here. Janelle, is that okay if we stop here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And then if anybody wants to send in some questions, or Rick, if you have any questions, you can jump into just to see if anyone has anything to say. We're going to keep moving, Rick.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be any additional questions at this point.
Again, we're going to deal with the 6 key principles for successful diversity and inclusion next. So the first one is making diversity and inclusion a core value. Let me just say this. The CEO of the business, him or her, has to make diversity and inclusion a way of doing business. And diversity and inclusion has to be in every department, in everything that the business or institution or the nonprofit does. And again, it's important because we've been doing business the same way for so long that this is a new way of doing business. And let me just say this as it relates to diversity and inclusion, that some politicians have turned diversity and inclusion to no white males. Let me say this, and I hope there's some white males other than you, Rick, listening to this. I don't even want to say progressive because that's been taken over politically, but people with knowledge like myself and Janelle, we want white men at the table. We want to learn and do business with white men. Why would we want to get away from white men? The country is controlled by whites. We don't want to get rid of whites. We want to be included in the business. Let me just say this. Every dollar spent, on this workshop, I'm going to say things that you never heard before, or things that are not popular. So let me just say this. For every dollar spent in business, that dollar circulates in the community at least 8 times. So if you have a $10 million project, you really have an $80 million project because that dollar is spent over and over again in the community, whether it's to buy food or to pay rent. That dollar keeps getting spent by the people who earn the money, and then by consumers who come in contact with that money. It gets into the banking system and circulates. And so I will stop believing in diversity and inclusion when companies from Washington, D.C. and companies from Atlanta start moving to Philadelphia. When PepsiCo and Coca-Cola move their headquarters and move to Philadelphia and say, we're creating too many Black millionaires in Atlanta, I will stop preaching diversity and inclusion, because in Washington and in New York and in DC, where we have 41% in Atlanta, 36% inclusive numbers, over 30% in New York, and they're creating millionaires in the minority community and creating thousands and thousands of jobs. Those companies that are doing business with them are getting richer and richer and richer also, because the dollar is circulating 8 times in the community. So I will not accept the propaganda coming from places in Washington that say that diversity is about Nixon white men. It is just not true.
Yes, yes.
I hear amen in the corner.
I know, right? Yes, and, and I mean, I really don't have too much to add to that, other than what I always like to preach. When I was in my different organizations, at the Fed, at AstraZeneca, and then at Chemours, diversity and inclusion really needs to be a part of the organizational culture. It has to be a way of life. It has to be something that that as a culture, everyone just does. And then it also has to have that top-down management support. So it has to trickle down from the CEO down to that middle management level. A lot of times there's disconnect between upper level management and then that middle level management. There's a lot of disconnect sometimes with that. But it has to flow down from the top all the way through the organization in order for D&I to truly be successful. And then it also has to be a part of the processes and tools that are in place in order for it to be sustainable and in order for it to really be effective. So if you don't have that top-down management support, if it's not a part of your culture and really the way that your business does business, then it's not going to be sustainable at all.
Next. Diversity and inclusion has to be a part of corporate, as part of the culture. It has to be performance-based. And so everybody from the CEO to the board of directors to senior management, everybody in the C-suite. So COO, CFO, chief information officer, and so on and so forth, chief diversity officer, their performance has to be based on their D&I decision making. Raises, bonuses, and promotions need to be tied to diversity and inclusion throughout the organization. So it's diversity and inclusion as it relates to what's going on internally, and it's also diversity and inclusion as to what's going on in the community, and then also as it relates to procurement, contracting, who is getting the contracts, who are our suppliers, who are our consultants, who is doing our marketing, our advertising, and on and on and on and on it goes. And again, companies really have to look at, and again, we'd love you to give us some examples as you go through, Janelle, of what kind of changes you saw companies make where they were successful and what changes were unsuccessful as it relates to decision making after we changed the culture. And that is why, hear me out, people, I'm not downing diversity and inclusion executives, because we know every Fortune 1000 company is looking for a diversity and inclusion executive right now as we speak. And I'm not downing them. But the chairman of the board and the president and CEO of the company must be responsible.
Absolutely.
If their only entree into diversity and inclusion is hiring somebody, normally I'm gonna get killed right here. A lot of times a black female, I'm sorry, Janelle,
Mm-hmm.
But
No, go ahead, preach. You better preach.
excuse, thank you. Normally a black female is brought into the executive suite to run HR and to run diversity and inclusion. And if the CEO's only decision is to do that, to hire those two people and wash their hands, then the company is not responsible.
Yeah, and their D&I objectives or initiatives are going to fail. You know, so I agree 1,000%. And again, you know, it goes to the last slide. You know, it has to be that top-down management support, but there also has to be support in place to help these individuals succeed. And how that's going to work is if there's there's baseline data that, you know, so what data, how they say data doesn't lie, you know, so once you can get the data around your diversity and inclusion initiatives, once you know where your baseline data is, then that way you'll be able to build a program around that data that can be sustainable. And those are the kinds of things that are going to help these individuals as they come into an organization, as you're building your culture, as you're communicating it, you know, through the organization, having those processes in place, making sure that these goals tie into everyone's yearly bonuses,
Performance.
Yeah, performance reviews, all that. Those are things that you can put into place. Organizations can put into place to ensure the sustainability of those practices. Absolutely.
Next.
Again, if you have questions, please post them in either the chat box or the Q&A.
Create support structures for diversity and inclusive growth. Preferred vendor programs. I'm going to use LF Driscoll. LF Driscoll is my client, and I've been working with them since Comcast. LF Driscoll is one of the largest. They are the largest construction company, GC, in the greater Philadelphia area. Their sales are around $735 million a year, and they work on large business and institutional projects. And I became a vendor with them, supplying staff, a staff augmentation. So they would get a project, and they would be the project manager, and I would be the assistant project manager or the safety director, or I'd come in and do quality control while the project was going on, and I'd sit right next to them on the job. So what they did was, and again, this through us pushing through Comcast and learning from that. What they have done is the CEO, Max Stubb, I don't know if he's here, has formed a diversity committee, one of the first corporations in the greater Philadelphia to form a diversity committee with outside directors. I sit on the committee. We, the outside directors, then went out and through a process through the African American Chamber, the Latino Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, the Asian Chamber, through Minority Supplier Development Council, we went out and identified 21 mostly Black and Hispanic vendors to bring into the company and make them preferred vendors. We said, what do you do? What do you mean? We took them to purchasing. Mm-hmm. Well, in this case, it's estimating. So we took them to purchasing, Janelle, and we vetted them.
That's awesome.
And then we said, you're now a preferred vendor. You know what a preferred vendor is? It's a vendor that you take from project to project to project.
Absolutely, yep.
That's a preferred vendor. And what we're now doing is we're marrying those preferred minority vendors with their preferred white vendors who were preferred for 111 years. Because these are the relationships in construction are intergenerational. So people that work for LF Driscoll, their sons and daughters now work for LF Driscoll. The vendors, whether it's plumbing, electrical, roofing, all union vendors, their children and cousins now work in those vending companies. And all these it's a family business.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a family business. Eric Littner from Dale is a major construction company. I sat down with Eric Littner. Sorry, Eric, I'm using your name in a Zoom. Eric told me that people that work for his grandfather, families that work for his grandfather 2 and 3 generations ago, those families still work for Dale. So when COVID hit and he had to lay off people, it's like laying off his own family.
Wow.
And so part of the reasons why minorities are not included It's not racism per se. Hear me out. It's intergenerational interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So your grandfather and your great-grandfather worked with the same vendors and worked with the same employees, and now their kids are working for you.
Yeah.
Same
Absolutely.
thing with the unions. And so what we did was we went to the heart of the matter and say, these vendors have been working for L.F. Driscoll for 100 years. Let's partner them with some minority groups that have never been preferred,
Mm-hmm.
but they do good work.
Yeah.
And so mentor protege, let's talk about that. Mentor protege is amazing. That's where you take a big company, normally a majority company, and you partner them with a minority company. So you take a huge roofer with a minority roofer and you partner them to bid projects together. And again, this comes from the owner. RFPs, bids, and RFQs. We can use Plan Bid or eBuild or whatever we're using. A lot of those bid documents do not take into account or do not take seriously inclusion. They just don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's an afterthought. They're especially low bid, and I'll talk about that later. Make internal changes at board, executive, and management level. Training and recruitment. How do we, and I'm working with CBRE, that's become, and I'm proud to work with CBRE, but now the CBRE is the largest brokerage firm in the world. And now we're working with CBRE, and they're like, look, we've been doing things this way for like 100 years. Let's go to historically Black colleges. Let's create a program for brokers. Let's look at how we compensate brokers, because brokers, commercial brokers, you're on commission, and until you get your first sale, you have to do a draw, meaning you have to borrow money from the company, and until you do your first deal, you don't get paid. And when you get paid, they take the money back that you borrowed. So if when you look at wealth, the average white household has a net worth of $160,000. The average Black household has an average net worth of $16,000. So the average white net worth is 10 times that of the average Black family. So how are you going to take a job on commission, and then when you do your first sale, your draw is taken out, so now you're broke again. And so you there with the compensation plans and with history, Blacks are not getting into commercial real estate, partially because of the payment of how payments are structured. I'm sorry, Janelle, I'm getting excited.
No, go ahead. I love it. No, I wanted to speak on two things. The rewriting and reimagining the RFPs, your bid process, your RFQs. That's something that I preached at each of the organizations that I was in. And what I challenged our leadership to do was for us to rewrite our RFPs in such a way that when I was at the Fed, for example, what we did was we rewrote our RFP language, and we also rewrote the process around our RFPs so that every RFP that went out, we had to have at least one small and or diverse business included in that bid. And if you did not, you had to have a written reason why you didn't. And then on top of that, you had to have that reason approved by our CPO. So, these are the things that we implemented, that I implemented when I was at the Fed, looking at our processes. What are some of the things that, historically we have been basically eliminating a pool of suppliers because we weren't even including them in the mix when we went out for our bids and proposals and such. So, that was something that I always challenged the leadership in each organization that I was in. Let's look at our language. How do we create an environment where we make sure that we include diverse businesses in every step of the way? And if we don't include them, then we better have a good reason why, that there's none in this space or whatever have you. But putting those processes in place is crucial. So Yeah, that's the one point I wanted to make with that.
We have a question, Blaine. Can you share any sample bid document provisions or RFP language that has been effective in resulting in contracts from minority-owned firms?
Yes, I'm gonna leave that to you, Rick. So if you could send me the people that attended, I'll just send it out to everyone. You know, a sample RFP. We'll take the names off, that sort of thing.
Okay. We can do that.
We also have been building a list of, in construction and real estate, we've also been building a list of vendors and qualified minority vendors. So we're also willing to send that out to anybody that requested. So if we could take care of that afterwards.
Okay.
And one other thing I wanted to mention too was to most large organizations should have someone in place in that supplier diversity role. So, you know, I always would preach to, you know, small business owners to reach out to the folks in supplier diversity. They're supposed to be the connection between you and folks in the business. And they're really your allies in trying to learn and navigate how to navigate through the supply chain of whatever particular organization that is. So, you know, I always recommend to reach out to folks in supplier diversity, because at the very essence of their role, it's to help small and diverse businesses gain access to folks within their organization.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. One is, what would you recommend that we do to sort of support development of diverse workforce coming up in the construction industry, and especially sort of the next generation that's not even in the workforce yet, but how do we ensure that they have opportunities to be involved in the construction industry?
So again, there are already certain programs out there. And again, Rick, I can send out some information on this. If you send me you know, afterwards, we can clean this up. One of the programs, and I have it right here, is the CAP program. So the CAP program is a very, very successful program in taking people, young men and women from the community, training them for apprenticeships and getting them successfully into the unions. OIC has a program. OIC, Opportunities Industrial Center, has a program where they take returning residents and do job training for construction. And of course, there are other programs through ABC. ABC is the Association of Building Contractors. They're a non-union group, but they have had a training program to get people into construction. And of course, the unions have some programs which I do not know about, but I can send you the information that we have in terms of getting young people into the workforce as it relates to construction. Go ahead, Rick.
One additional question is, are there any particular models for the mentor-protege program?
The model is out of the federal government. The 8A program has the most successful mentor-protege program, where people that I think the program is for 8 or 9 years. And once people are about to graduate, they can actually bring a smaller company in and mentor them and show them how to get work in the 8A program. Iola Harper from the city of Philadelphia is pushing a mentor-protege program, which of course we want to be a part of. But as far as I know, in Philadelphia, mentor-protege is just now, is new. And we're doing it at LF Driscoll. We're hoping that we can do it with Gilbane, which is another huge firm that may or may not be on this call. If Gilbane is on this call, let me know. And we're hoping that we can do it with the city of Philadelphia, where vendors again, that have one family, I don't want to call their name, has been doing business. Well, the one family formed 3 different companies, and they have been doing business with the city for at least 50 or 100 years, one family. And they do hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars with the city of Philadelphia in construction, one family. And they formed 3 different businesses. I won't call their names. If you push me, I will. But again, they are a perfect candidate. This one family from South Jersey, Blackwood, New Jersey, that one family could form 3 to 10 mentor-protege programs, because they do so much business with the city of Philadelphia. They do so much business with DRPA, Delaware River Port Authority. They do so much business with the water department, and on and on and on it goes. And so we have the makings of a system where we could easily push mentor-protege program, but it's not a requirement in the RFP. And let me just say this, under the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court, you can put whatever you want in the RFP and say you're not responsive. So there are ways to get around the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court. You can also do a disparity study, which shows that there has been historic discrimination. The state of Pennsylvania has done a disparity study to show that less than 1% of state contracts, go to Blacks and Latinos. And so because they did the disparity study, once you do a disparity study under the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court, you can actually do a set aside and say, these contracts or these set of contracts are going to be set aside for small and minority business, but you have to do a disparity study. If you don't do a disparity study, then you have to change your RFP so that the bidders either are responding or they're non-responding. And if they're non-responsive, you can say it's right here in the RFP, you did not respond to this RFP. So the RFP sets us up for mentor-protege. It sets us up for majority-minority contracting. It sets us up for joint ventures. It sets us up for all kinds of programs. If we'd only, let me give you a great example. And I know somebody's going to be offended, but I don't care. This is not a workshop to make you feel good. This is a workshop to make you think about what's going on. So DOMAS, in low-income housing tax credits, a contracting firm known as DOMAS gets most of the work in the city. They've been getting, and Ed Hillis is a friend of mine. He's a really good guy. But not one owner has said to Ed, Ed, to get my low-income housing tax credit, to build my low-income housing, you have to form a joint venture with this vendor over here, or go find a vendor, form a joint venture, or do a mentor-protege so that small companies can learn the business and build capacity. Not in anybody's RFP, nobody's. And that's how easy it is. Just put it in the RFP, or put it in, or make it a requirement in your bid. Boom, the market will respond.
All right.
Sorry, Domus. Wow, here we go again.
So I think we kind of hit this slide with the last two, talking about the RFP bid, RFQ process.
You talk about best bid, Janelle, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you want to attack it for me?
Sure. Well, do you want to go first from the construction side, and then I'll go?
Right. Yeah. So again, we need to develop best bid systems that take into account price, quality, and inclusion. Let me tell you why low bid in real estate, why low bid is discriminatory. Mm-hmm. If you've been working with a subcontractor and that subcontractor knows that preferred subcontractor, whether it's a roofer or a plumber or a carpenter or a painter, and they know that the next 3 projects that you get as a contractor, that they're going to be on that project, they can lower their prices, because if you have volume, you can lower your average unit cost. Everybody with me on that? Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. What happens with these bids is, the owner goes out and puts out an RFP or a bid document. But long before that, there's a period called pre-construction, okay? Nobody knows about pre-construction. The pre-construction is when you're working with the designers, you identify a contractor who gives you early prices, and you tell that contractor, hey, we're not guaranteeing you this project, but I need prices so I can file my application to the state, I can file my application to HUD, I can file my application to the bank. You have to get a contractor to give real pricing. That contractor, that general contractor during the pre-construction phase, then goes out to their favorite subcontractors. This is how it works. And they said, hey, I'm bidding on this project at 30th Street. I need you to give me some prices. I can't guarantee that you get the job, but for the past 50 years, you've been working for me, so give me some prices. And then what happens is, after everybody has their pricing and we go to zone, we now go to zoning, and we have to have a community meeting, and the city council person says, you need to have an outreach meeting. those same people go out to the community and say, we're having a community or vendor meeting or a inclusion meeting. But by the time you get to the inclusion meeting, the owner already has its architects, engineers, project manager, and they have a general contractor in tow that already has prices from their favorite subs. So now you tell the minority subs who has never worked with that general contractor, go out and beat my favorite sub price. They don't have a chance in hell. So now we're racing to the bottom to beat a pricing that the general contractor received from their favorite sub. So the general contractor doesn't even want to use the minority because they don't know them. They don't know them. And then they tell them, if I'm going to use you, you have to beat a contractor that I've been working with for 50 years. Mm-hmm. And so this low bid thing is a race to the bottom that puts minorities out of business. Because for you to get that contract, the contractor didn't want to give it to you anyway, and you have to come in at the lowest possible bid. That means that if you make a mistake, you're out of business. Mm. Last but not least, in construction, the low bid winner is almost never the lowest bid. Study after study has shown that on these low bid government contracts, that whoever is the low bidder, they know where the change orders are, and the low bid, study after study has shown that the low bid normally comes in somewhere in the middle of the original bids. I'm out, Janelle. You have to talk.
No, I mean, that you basically said it all, you know, how historically discriminatory these bid systems are. And, you know, just speaking on my side of the view, which is within the organizations, that's why it truly is so important that there's someone in my role and similar that's going to challenge the way of this is how it's always been done. And so, you know, I urge, you know, small business owners all the time to reach out to folks in those supply diversity D&I roles that are going to really be the champion for you and the champion for change. So, but no, you basically hit the nail right on the head.
I actually missed the question from the end of the last slide, so I'll pose it now. And it's about third-party funds control. So do you think third-party funds control is a good way of building contractor financial management skills while reducing risk for prime contractors and owners?
Yes and no. It all depends on the deal that's struck. Are we going to set up an escrow account? Is it going to delay payments? Because one of the things with small subcontractors in real estate and construction is payments keep small vendors whole. Now the PIDC, I must commend PIDC and I must commend the Enterprise Center to a lesser degree, but PIDC does have an accounts receivable a line of credit, and I use that line of credit. It started out with Della Clark at $50,000, then it went to $200,000. Then I needed more money, and I went to PIDC, and they gave me a $400,000 line of credit. So what it does, that accounts receivable lines of credit does is, once my voucher is approved, PIDC will fund it and signed off on. PIDC will fund it in 2 days, 90%. And so if I put in 1 month a voucher for $100,000, I know that month, within 2 days of me putting in that voucher, I'll have $90,000 wired into my bank account. So yeah, there are different ways. There's accounts receivable financing with PIDC. There are other types of and by the way, and I use the lines of credit provided to me by the Enterprise Center and by PIDC to make my business liquid. I then graduated from those programs, and now I teach some of the classes at PIDC. I'm teaching a class right now at the Enterprise Center for Small Businesses. And so, going into those programs and then graduating does give you an opportunity to become a poster child, and I hope to become a huge poster child at some point, because now we're bankable. We don't have to be in an economic development program to run our business. We have our lines of credit with Citizens Bank, all because these economic development agencies gave us that opportunity.
There's one more question before from the previous slide, I think, as well, about mentoring, and they're wondering whether you all are available to mentor a new CEC joint venture project.
Again, from my perspective, I can give advice, but I don't have the time to do ongoing mentoring, but I can always give advice.
Okay. And then a couple more questions that just came in. Oh, I just answered that one, or you just answered that one.
No, I see a question from Nicole Westerman.
Yep.
Are there owners or GCs who have effective ways of paying small businesses quickly? Again, you have to develop, a lot of times you have to develop a track record with the vendor. You know, we work for Keating, we work for Driscoll. We now work for Jefferson Hospital. We're the assistant project manager on Jefferson Hospital, and you know, it's all negotiated up front. You know, with Jefferson, our negotiation was, you know, we're partnering with CBRE, you know, the largest brokerage firm. They have a project management division. We're partnering with CBRE Project Management, and they're like, look, you know, we'll pay you 5 days after we're paid. You know, so I think in terms of payments, you have to negotiate. If you have a relationship with a general contractor, you have a relationship with an owner, again, I'm talking from a project management standpoint, or a subcontracting standpoint in construction, you can negotiate 30 days. But again, at that point, it's a friendship. Most contracts say paid when paid. So if you're working for the city of Philadelphia and the city takes, or Philadelphia Housing Authority or the Gas Works, and you're on a team of vendors, and your prime vendor is there and you're a sub to a prime, the contract normally says pay when paid. So you as a small vendor you have to go out to the Enterprise Center, or you have to go out to PIDC with a signed contract and get that contract financed. Most general contractors and owners will not pay earlier than 30 days. And a lot of general contractors or primes, the contract says pay when paid. So if you're out 90 days, if you're out 6 months, that's when you get paid. And to do that, you have to have a contract line of credit against your receivables. I don't know if Janelle, if you want to add to that about on the corporate side, how you guys pay.
Yeah, so, you know, each organization is different. You know, I've been in organizations where, you know, we've pushed to have the payment a lot shorter than typically, especially for, you know, for our small business owners, just because knowing that having a payment of, you know, 90 to 180 days can be, you know, damaging for a small business. So, you know, but every organization is different. When I was at the Fed and AstraZeneca, we really tried really hard to have shorter payment terms, and I really pushed for that. But there are, unfortunately, organizations, you know, for whatever reason, they have those longer payment terms, and that's, you know, I guess counterproductive to, you know, the whole D&I and inclusive efforts. But yeah, that was something that I pushed hard for, knowing that, you know, 90 and 100 days for a small business to get paid could really, you know, be damaging for an organization.
So tell me what were some of the results on the corporate side?
Yeah, I mean, so the results, you know, when you're able to do that, then the results are great. You know, when you're able to lower the payment terms for a small business from 180 days to at least 30, you know, that's a huge shift in capability for what that small business can do. So, but, you know, there has to be someone in that role that's willing to challenge the status quo, that's willing to challenge, well, this is the way it's always been done. And how I would challenge and say, okay, well, you know, I'm in this role, you know, this organization brought me in this role for a reason. So I'm here to challenge the status quo. I'm here to challenge the way things have always been done. And so, you know, otherwise, then why am I even here? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to say this. I work for Comcast. I was on the owner's rep team. Let me just say this. The closer you can get to the owner, the more likely you are to get paid.
Yeah.
The further you are from the owner, the less likely you are to get paid on a timely basis. I am working for the city of Philadelphia on the new police headquarters. I'm one of the assistant project managers, not me, but my staff. And we get paid within 30 days. I don't know if the city is paying within 30 days, but Keating pays us every 30 days. I worked on Comcast. I had 2 contracts on Comcast. I was working directly for the owner's rep, Macro Consultants, a Seville company, and they paid us within 20 days. And Driscoll, after a while, paid us within 60 days. Now I'm at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital, and I am 2 people away from the owner. So it's the University of Pennsylvania Hospital, there's Driscoll, and there's BFW. We're doing some project management on behalf of Driscoll, and we get paid every 30 days. However, it's because you develop that relationship.
Yeah,
and let me just say this. I'm gonna do a plug here, Rick. You have to get your paperwork perfect. If your paperwork is not perfect, you will not be paid. And if you need help with your paperwork, call John Thomas, CPA, or call Damon Gamble, CPA. I have 2 people. I have 2 small businesses that can help vendors and contractors get their paperwork correctly. And so if you can get your paperwork correctly, you can get paid within 60 days on a regular basis. If you can develop a friendship and do excellent work, and also the owner likes you or the GC likes you, and you're not too far away from the owner, you can get paid within 30 days because we have done it. But it's because our paperwork is perfect, our insurance is perfect, our workers' comp is perfect, because that's what they're looking for, not to pay you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we have another question with regard to helping small contractors with access to bonding, lines of credit, or capital. Are there ways that CDCs or project managers can assist those small contractors with those issues?
Again, I'm going to turn this over. This is definitely an enterprise center question, or a Temple Small Business Network, Temple Small Business Development Center question. So I'm going to turn it over to them. And in my response to you, Rick, I'll include the numbers for them. The Enterprise Center is 215-895-4000. 215-895-4000 is the Enterprise Center. I see a question coming over on retainers. Let's jump into that. Okay, for those of you that don't know, this is deep. This is a deep dive. 10% of a contract fee is withheld by the contractor and subcontractors. It's held by the owner until the project is complete. Normally, that 10% is all of a small vendor's profit. You know, you make around 10% and then 10% overhead. What we're seeing now in the AIA documents is once the project is up to 50% complete, that 10% drops from 10% to 5%. I believe that small vendors should only have to give up 3% of their as retainage, because they're small vendors. And if they had to bid the project, like if you've been listening to this, you know they bid to the bone. And so if a small vendor is smart enough to get on a project, they're probably close to losing money or they're losing money. And so holding their 10% is actually almost like suicide. So again, I think that as we work with small businesses, that the retainage should be 5%. And once you get to 50%, it should, I really think it should be 3%. And that's up to the small business has to have a lawyer or have good negotiating skills so that they don't get all of their profits withheld till the project is over. And then even when the project is over, the general contractor may not be paid out for 3 or 6 months. So that small business is waiting 3 or 6 months to get their 10% retainage. So if you have $1 million contract to do a carpentry for a building, and so all of your profit, $100,000, is held to the end of that project. That can kind of break you. And so we need to be open to more negotiations with small business. And that's part of that RFP, RFQ document that we can begin to change to be supportive of small and minority businesses.
Okay.
Where are we?
Yeah, I'm going to resort to you for this one, the file 13.
Create actionable consequences. 10 years ago when I started my business and found out how segregated construction and real estate was in Philadelphia, I went down to the Office of Small Business Support in Washington, D.C. And I spoke to them and I said, what makes you so successful in creating millionaires and jobs in the minority community? And the answer was file 13. File 13 is the trash can. So what the city of Washington, D.C., this is just the city, what the city of Washington, D.C. did for all their contracts was they laid out in their RFP and RFQ, you know, what they wanted, you know, whether it was 35 or 50% or whatever. And so if a vendor came in without serious minority participation, it was seen as non-responsive, and they actually threw it in the trash can. That got out on the street. And the vendors immediately started to respond in creative and real ways to include minority businesses. And now, you know, a lot of those small businesses are now large businesses and are bidding on contracts, not just with the Washington, D.C. government, but are now bidding in the private industry, all because Washington, D.C. Used file 13 and the word got out on the street. You know, a lot of times an RFP is written and it says, you know, we want 30%, or we want 35% minority and women, and somebody comes in and wins the contract and they did best efforts. I think best efforts is just an excuse. The city of Philadelphia is 55% minority. The city of Philadelphia is minority majority. And so we need to do better collectively, myself included, in including minorities on bids. And to say we can't find anybody, call me. I have a list if it has to do with real estate and construction. Call Iola Harper, call Della Clark, call PIDC. PIDC has a whole bunch of vendors that have financing. So to say that we can't find minorities, outside of elevators, to say that we can't find minorities to do work, it's just a silly excuse. Define and mitigate risk. And somebody asked this question, you know, there has to be a way to lower insurance costs and to lower bonding costs for minority businesses. And one of the ways to do that is where the owner can talk to their insurance agency and talk to their bonding agency and say, can you give us a break for small businesses to get insurance and bonding? Because we do, you know, $500 million a year with you. And that goes for the city, and that goes for institutions, and that goes for large businesses. And change organizational culture. Reward people and make them examples if that division or department is taking inclusion seriously. Promote those people, reward those people, recognize those people, and punish people who don't. Don't give them a raise, don't give them a bonus, terminate them, and you'll see how culture changes. CBRE is making a change. This was before George Floyd. CBRE has been making a culture change to hire Blacks and other minorities at CBRE, and the director of the Philadelphia office, Adam Mullen, came in, and the culture was so bad. He said the first thing he had to do was fire 4 people because the culture was so bad. And so now CBRE is trying to do a culture change in terms of minority and inclusion. But that's what you have to do.
Number 6.
Build a successful system and avoid knee-jerk reaction. Successful models, the Convention Center in Philadelphia. Now Gilbane, Comcast, Stradley Ronan. I'm going to tell you what happened at Stradley Ronan, and my mentor is Bill Sasso, the chairman of Stradley Ronan. But I'm going to tell you what he did. They had a diversity and inclusion committee. He just terminated them. They were supposed to be hiring Black and minority attorneys. They didn't hire anybody. So why is the diversity and inclusion? So many corporations have diversity and inclusion committees. Why? Why do you have a diversity and inclusion committee when the results are the same year after year? So you know what Mr. Sasso did? He just took it over. He just said, you're done. And you know what Mr. Sasso did? He went out and started hiring some black and minority attorneys. That's what he did. LF Driscoll Construction. And I said the convention center. The convention center has had a culture of inclusion that has lasted for generations, because they started out that way and it's now part of their DNA. Avoid formation of a diversity and inclusion committee with no budget or power. Everybody's forming a diversity and inclusion committee. Do they have a staff? What are their goals? Do they have a budget? Can they go out in the community and do things? Do they have any power in hiring, vending, purchasing? Do they have any power whatsoever? Are they just there because a corporation can say, we have a diversity and inclusion committee? Avoid hiring a diversity and inclusion executive with no budget, no power, and no mandate. The diversity and inclusion culture must come from the chairman of the board or chairwoman of the board, and it must come from the CEO. And any corporation or institution that institutes a D&I committee or a D&I program, or any contractor or any nonprofit that institutes a D&I program where the D&I committee is not coming from the top, where decision-making is not coming from the top, and is being integrated fully into a value system into that organization, it will be a failure, and it will be like putting lipstick on a pig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. You know, how I try to run our supply diversity programs within the different organizations that I was in. You know, I always looked to finding allies within the organization as well. So as that D&I person, you're looking for other folks within the organizations that can be allies to you on issues of diversity and inclusion. And then also employee resource groups are also very valuable because diversity is diversity, you know, whether it's employee diversity, supplier diversity, diversity, you know, within the organization, hiring diverse employees and such. And so, you know, most organizations have these employee resource groups that are also a great resource to tap into. But but again, like you said, you know, if there's no budget, no power, no mandate, then why are we here? You know, then it's really not a part of our core values. So going back to like our first slide, when we talk about it really has to be a part of your core values, it has to be a part of your culture, and it has to come from top down. Those are going to be the things that keep these programs sustainable.
Let me just say this, and if you didn't get anything out of this workshop, and Rick, you're smiling because I'm just off the chain. If you didn't get anything from this workshop, we're looking for white men and we're looking for white women to join us. Mm-hmm. That's what we're looking for. If it's just black people talking about diversity and inclusion, it will be a complete failure. Yeah. I'm being totally honest. We're looking for white males and we're looking for white females to join us in this D&I value system that we're trying to create. Last but not least, I'm going to end with the statistic. Studies have shown in the Fortune 500 companies that companies that are serious about diversity have a 33% higher return on assets, return on investment, return on shareholder value versus companies that don't. So all the numbers show that diversity and inclusion lead to making more money and to more success. Our history and the propaganda and the misinformation that we've been fed over these years have made diversity some kind of a side program. Mm-hmm. Every corporation, every nonprofit, every institution, diversity and inclusion should be front and center in everything we do. And you will see better results as it relates to business performance.
Are there any additional questions from the audience, from participants? I think we've answered everything that's been asked so far, with the exception there's some follow-up documents that we plan to send out to attendees. Any final questions folks have for our panelists?
want to do a final statement, Janelle?
No, I just want to thank all of you for spending this time with us. You know, this has been, you know, for the last 14, 15 years, you know, my different roles in supply diversity have been, you know, really, you know, my passion. You know, I'm very passionate about being an advocate for change, you know, helping small business owners navigate the, you know, procurement and supply chain systems within major organizations, as well as now with my role at the Economy League within our anchors, eds and meds. So if there's any questions that anyone has more specifically about Paige and the Economy League, I'll drop my contact information in the chat. But please feel free to reach out, and we'd love to continue the conversation.
Oh, go ahead, Blane.
I talk a lot and I get really excited about what we're doing. I'm not even in the diversity and inclusion space. I think I'm just in the space because I'm Black, and I saw in Philadelphia how blatant the exclusion was. And I think that we're, as a city, we're hurting ourselves. We have a 30% poverty rate. We have too many people going to prison. We have too many people coming out of the public school system not ready to take on a job or being able to read at a 9th grade level. We have 40 or 50% of our kids dropping out of school. And we have to find ways to address that so that we can become a forward-thinking city, so that we can become a city that's creating wealth and creating opportunity for people. We can do better. We cannot continue same old, same old.
Well, Blane and Janelle, I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge, your experiences, your passion for sure with attendees today. And I think, Blane, one of the comments you made at the end is really critical. It can't be left up just to people of color to raise these issues. It's got to be everyone if we're going to effectively address these things. So folks with white privilege need to speak up as well and be part of a unified voice to move this issue forward so that we can increase diversity and inclusion in a real meaningful way, not just on development projects or procurement, but throughout our organizations and work across all sectors. So thank you everyone for joining us for today's session. I see Janelle put her email address into the chat, as well as did Blane. So if you have follow-up questions, you can contact them directly. And as mentioned, we'll plan to send out some follow-up documents that were referenced post-conference. And be sure to mark your calendars for August 12th and September 2nd. Those are the dates for our last two sessions for our conference, Equitable Development Conference. The one on August 12th will focus on youth voices, and the one on September 2nd is more around philanthropy. So we certainly want you to be part of those conversations as well. I'm just seeing some final comments in the chat. Looks like people are appreciative of today's session. So a virtual round of applause for our presenters. We greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to share with us today. Thank you.
And thank you for moderating, Rick, too. Thank you for that.
Rick, thanks for this opportunity. I'm hoping that Janelle will continue to go around with me so that we can continue to deliver this message, because I think
absolutely.
I think there's this propaganda going around on diversity, and we're here to set the record straight.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And have a good day.
Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Right.